Every single content creator that is growing goes through a moment that I call the snap. If you're new to content creation, you may not have experienced this yet, but you will. Oh, you will. And if you're a seasoned creator, you'll know exactly what I'm referring to in this video. We'll talk about what this concept of the snap is, I'll lay out a process to navigate it, and I'll show you a path to navigating challenges that you face as a creator without nearly as much of the stress. But before we get into it, we need to start with a quick legal disclaimer. My name is Rustin. I'm a financial advisor. I work specifically with content creators. This video is for educational purposes only and does not constitute personalized financial, legal, or other professional advice. It's not a recommendation to buy or sell any securities or an offer of advisory services. Advisory services are offered through my firm, 80% Financial. We're a registered investment advisor, and we work with clients in jurisdictions where we are registered or exempt from registration. For more information about our services, fees, and disclosures, please review our Form ADV at 80percentfinancial.com. And as always, please consult with a qualified financial professional before making any financial decisions. All right, so let's talk about the snap. When you're a new content creator, your focus is solely on the content and growing your channel, right? You're not fixating on gear or doom scrolling social media and spending a bunch of time on other things that make you feel busy but don't really directly help you grow your channel, right? Call out aside and fast forward a bit, there will come a time that you realize that you can't do it on your own, that there's information or a problem that feels really overwhelming. Usually the first time that this happens is when your workload as a creator is unsustainable and you want to outsource some of that work. Maybe you work a full-time job and your channel is growing and you just need some help. Many times creators are generating some revenue, and it's at this point that most creators hire a thumbnail designer or a video editor to help them with the workload. And this feels good until the second snap. As revenue increases from the channel, you suddenly have this epiphany that you are all on your own when it comes to taxes. You feel a pit in your stomach, like existential dread. So you panic, you do a quick Google search, you get overwhelmed, and you decide just to put it off altogether until tax season. These moments are what I call the snap. And I realize that it sounds dramatic, and it often feels traumatic whenever you're going through it. But I promise, every single creator goes through the snap. It's the point in time that finances, taxes, brand deals, and all of the other standard business components become too complex, too overwhelming, and you realize that you just need some help. That or your channel went viral and it all happened way too fast, and you feel elated, but you also feel like you're melting inside. Psychologically, this is a difficult transition. Most people don't grow up learning how to manage personal finances, do taxes as an entrepreneur, work with brands, let alone know how to operate a media business. Keeping up with your upload or streaming schedules, interacting with your communities, and dealing with a constant barrage of things that beg for your attention is a lot of work. I get why the money and management parts are placed on the back burner. But instead of just constantly reacting to these moments, I would like to instead propose a process to ease the snap. By the way, if you enjoy this content, I do appreciate the support on the videos, and subscribe to see more content about financial planning and business management as it relates to content creators. Ultimately, the root of your success navigating the snap is dependent on your ability to manage your own expectations and to keep a clear head. And so here's the process that I like to use to ease the snap. Step number one is to write down the problem. Keep a notebook on your desk. If you experience the snap with taxes, write taxes in the notebook. If the problem is inconsistent income and trying to figure out how to deal with cash flow, put down cash flow. If you're overwhelmed trying to figure out brand deals, pitch decks, and sponsorships, write that down. The point here is to get it out of your brain. If you're anything like me, I tend to ruminate on things over and over and over in my head, thinking that somehow fixating on a problem will present a solution. But as we know, it doesn't. So something that helps me is to get the problem out of my head and onto paper. There's this weird switch that happens whenever I move a problem from my head to a piece of paper. It feels more tangible, more approachable, and less intimidating. I recently came across an article published by a gentleman by the name of Dr. Michael Greenberg. He's a clinical psychologist, and the article talks about how some people tend to ruminate on problems, which does nothing. In the article, he walks through a process to actually stop ruminating, to get off of the proverbial mental treadmill, which isn't really healthy problem solving. It's just like this anxious loop that we have to stop. Ultimately, the goal is to move into a mostly stress-free state in order to be able to think clearly and actually solve the problems that we're facing. I'll post a link in the description to the article. It was a fascinating read, and if you're anything like me and tend to overthink things, I definitely recommend giving it a read. All right, moving on. Step number 2 is to assess whether the challenge that you're facing is important or urgent or both. I want to illustrate this using something called the Eisenhower matrix. I personally really like this approach for assessing workload and problems, and it kind of clarifies things for me. Sometimes things come up that are important, but they're not really urgent, meaning they don't need to happen right this moment. Other times, things feel really urgent, like receiving a difficult email from a brand that you're working with, and you feel the need to instantly respond, even if an immediate response might be emotionally charged or suboptimal. When we identify where the challenge lies in this quadrant, it informs whether we need to take action or seek information, which we'll discuss now in step number 3. To start this step, you have to ask yourself whether the challenge is something that you need to work through on your own, or if this is an area that you should seek counsel. In my experience, there are 2 great principles that ease anxiety within your business. Those 2 principles are action and information. Sometimes when we experience the snap, we get hit with anxiety around a problem, which can lead to inaction. We tend to want to procrastinate, put it off, not think about it, stress over it, ruminate. And in those times, we just need to take an action. Do something, even if it ends up being the wrong one, in an attempt to solve the problem. And that action doesn't necessarily have to be writing that email right away. Even urgent problems often benefit from a small mental break. So take a walk, talk to a friend, and then assess your very next action, because action generates information. For me, whenever I'm feeling anxious about a decision or problem, much of the time it's due to me just not having all of the information that I need. And for content creators, when you're dealing with things like taxes, contractors, financial components, wealth management, the snap can occur when you simply don't have the information that you need in order to make a quality decision. This is where reaching out to an accountant, a financial advisor, a business advisor, or a mentor can help you assess the situation, navigate it, and greatly reduce your stress. Obviously, the best time to find these people is when you're not in that urgent, important quadrant, and you want to avoid trying to find help whenever you're desperate. That makes sense. But I also get that sometimes you just don't know what you don't know until you have a problem. And that's okay too. Which leads me to step number 4, which is take action. As I mentioned earlier, inactivity, procrastination, or ruminating on a challenge does nothing. You know, I had a colleague years ago who once told me an analogy that has stuck with me for a decade at this point. The quote is widely attributed to Irma Bombeck, and it says, "Anxiety is like sitting in a rocking chair. You're moving a lot, but you're not going anywhere." And so we have to remind ourselves just to let go of the rumination that keeps our heads spinning in circles and just find the next best action that will produce more information to help us solve the problem. And then you just start that process again. You take action, you get information, back to new action and new information. And then once that flywheel starts spinning, then you can get enough information and take enough actions to actually be able to solve the problem. When you inevitably experience the snap in your own creator journey, I hope that this simple process helps you take a step back, see the challenge more clearly, and get the information and support that you need to continue growing and reduce your stress along the way. The reality is that content creation and building a media business is a long journey. It's okay to not have all of the answers. You'll grow over time. The challenges don't go away. They just change as you become more experienced. The problems that you're facing today will seem probably minuscule in the next few years. But that's not because the problems that you face today are unimportant. It just means that you've grown and you're facing harder and harder challenges as you grow. The important part is to find the right support structure, get that in place to be able to navigate the uncertainties and stay in the game long enough to actually see the fruits of your labor. I hope this was helpful. I hope you all have a great week and see you in the next one. Cheers.